Hello everybody, my name is Soulfire Sai, welcome back to the Soulfire Studio, and we're here for the second episode of the Soulcast, or Soulfire Podcast, or whatever the fuck I call it. Um, Today, we have a very special guest. We have my good friend Lane here.
Hello.
And we're gonna be, talking about some theater and some stuff like that, and just kind of having a nice little chat for a bit. So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, and maybe we can talk about how we became friends with one another, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Uh, like Sai said, my name is Lane. Um, 20 years old, university, and yeah, I love doing theater. Met Sai through theater, met a few different people through theater, but I'm excited to be here.
Well, yeah, thank you for coming on. This is great. Kind of reviving the podcast a little bit, or at least attempting to. And I've got a couple of people lined up. I've got Gabby wants to hop in for one. So that'll be chaotic.
I want to listen to that one.
Hmm. But yeah, so I guess probably I for anybody that has been with my channel for a little while, they'll know that I did a show a little while ago called Angels in America, and that is how Lane and I met one another. So you were playing Harper, right?
Was.
What was that experience like playing Harper?
Um, well, that was like the only genuine female role. So it was a little weird to be like in a cast full of I mean, we did have a mix of male and females throughout the cast, but it was weird being the only female on stage. Um, and of course, she's addicted to Valium, so that's always a new experience. Um, but it's really fun to play because Valium isn't something that doesn't make you angry or anything. It was just really fun to be spaced out and just head in the clouds everywhere, which was an excuse I could use if I wasn't paying attention during rehearsal.
I'm just in character. I'm just in character. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah, we never actually got to interact on stage though, because we were playing characters that were opposite to one another in our situations. So we we only really started to interact more with one another like near the actual show dates. Because during rehearsal we didn't interact too much, if I remember
I
correctly.
think the first rehearsal we interacted with, and then there was a giant gap, was the one with you and Chris in the bathroom
Right.
when we were doing it in the history lounge, I want to say.
Maybe.
I
I
think so,
think
but that was the only
right.
one. That was the first one I remember, and then there was a gap before we did anything else.
That was the one where I came in super late and was like absolutely exhausted, and I got there and just sat in the corner, just like completely out of it. I
Yeah,
remember this now.
yeah,
Okay.
we were playing some trivia before everyone came because they were having a little history people meeting.
Okay.
We did not do well. We did not do well.
um, but yeah, so with Angels in America, it was such a that show had such a like intense subject matter to it. Uh, in your experience with theater, was that like one of the first shows that you did with like such an intense subject matter, or have you done like previous shows like that?
Did some in high school that potentially could have that intense subject matter,
Mm.
but because it was a high school production, it didn't quite get to that level, although the script could have had it. So it was my first time really embodying that and being able to be like surrounded by other actors who can embody that as well.
Hmm.
So it was a new experience.
Yeah, for myself, like I had done a couple of shows that had branched kind of across that line of the, I almost want to venture to say like politically correct almost, because
Yeah.
you know, as I've mentioned on the channel before, adult entertainment was one of the things that I have done. Um, and it was, but yeah, with I remember when we were in the callbacks for Angels, when everybody was switching roles and reading for every different character and everything. I remember sitting down with Justin, also known as Treats to the channel. Um, I remember sitting with him at one point. We were watching, I want to say, I think it was like you and Sheldon on, like, reading a scene together or something. And I remember looking at Justin and going, oh man, we're fucked. Because, like, there were so many people in that room that working with them in the callback and then also watching them off stage was just like, oh, there's a high caliber of talent in here. Like, yikes.
Um, yeah, that's fair. I was hopeful in the callback. It was my first time doing a show with Stock and Buskin, so I was a little nervous, but I did know Gabby, so like
You did.
having a friendly face in there helped. And they were theater kids. You can't like you can be worried about talent, but you can't be too scared of theater kids. We're all just sad and lonely underneath, needing some friends.
Yeah, but I
Um,
mean, I think when you see the extroverted side of theater kids, there is a little bit of fear involved with that,
it's fair.
right?
Yeah. Again, I gauged your level of talent just by your quiet stance, I want to say.
Right.
When everyone was in a circle, like warming up, like I know I was like bouncing on the balls of my feet, and you were just like sitting there, like watching. I was like, okay, this kid knows what he's doing.
It's that if I stay quiet, nobody will pay attention to me thing.
Well, that didn't work.
It didn't work. You're
Also,
right.
didn't you shave in between?
Um,
Didn't you walk in with a baby face to this one, or was it
I can't remember when it happened, but I know that I did shave at one point. It freaked everybody out.
did?
Cause
Because you had a full beard at auditions.
did I actually?
Yes, you did. It went with your whole director look I was getting.
Oh god. Yeah, the jacket and the scarf and everything. Yeah.
Yep.
I love that scarf.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things that I was thinking about with like coming up with stuff to talk about and everything, and thinking of Angels was the tech days, because for non-theater people, the tech day is like the most dreaded instance for theater kids in general,
Oh yeah.
because it is just painful and slow and ugh. And I was trying to remember, did we have to start our tech in 2017 of the tower, like of Dunton, the big like open like
Yes.
conference room? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the amount of times that we did tech rehearsals up in that room, just over my 4 years with the company, that is the worst possible space to run tech.
It
Because you
is.
get up there and you give a bunch of theater kids this giant window to look outside. Nobody is paying attention.
Yeah, that's what we did for like the first like hour.
Hmm.
Like we were waiting for things to show up and we were waiting for pictures to be taken and we were all just sitting and we're like, oh my God, look, there's a person. There's a dog. We would just like freak out.
We had the most chaotic cast easily, just with all of the wild energy that was a part of that, and you can attribute most of that to just Chris in his own right,
And Jeremy and
and
Sam.
Jeremy and Sam. Fair.
The three were something else.
Yeah. There was
Good things, but
always something that you'd just hear like in the midst of getting ready for a show that everybody would just stop and be like, "What? where did any of this come
well, when someone decides to eat garlic in the middle of a show, raw, rotting garlic.
Yeah. That. Uh. So one of the things, and this kind of branches off of just like theater in general and everything. We went to see. Oh, now I'm forgetting what it's called. Eurydice. That was it.
Yes.
And I remember like us talking about the show afterwards and everything, and that kind of spawned a question in my head. For you as somebody that's in theater and is now on the board of directors for a theater company, um,
Did I forget that?
um,
I am? Wow.
what in your mind makes a good show? Whether it's from before it's on stage or when it's on stage, however you want to take it, just what in your mind creates a good production?
Actually, in which you aren't taken away from it. Like you're completely invested in it. You want to know what happens next. And especially with live theater, you're so invested with the people on stage because you get to see them as the individual person. And most of the times, they're not someone amazingly famous that you probably know all about. They're an individual person, and you get to learn about them throughout the role, even though they may not be playing a role. Especially when we were standing outside Eurydice and watching all of the actors come out in their regular clothes, and you were like, what?
Yeah.
Because they were not like what they were on stage. But um, shows, yeah, I am completely mesmerized by almost any live theater. I don't think I've seen a bad show yet. I think it's because most of the theater I see is small town theater, or even if the ones I've seen in Toronto, they're um, who want to be on stage, who want to be because they like acting, because they're doing what they love. They may not be getting paid at all, or they may be getting not great pay, but they love what they're doing, so they give it their all because it's their risk that they have to take.
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
um, going off of that, I mean, now with the way that the world currently is, um, for theater, live theater has taken a massive toll because of all of this. So, that connection isn't necessarily the same anymore between the audience and the actor because now, there's these Zoom productions and there's like limited quantity of seats for live productions if they can even get the rights to do it, like all this sort of stuff. So in have you seen any like Zoom productions throughout this entire time, I guess?
Haven't. I've heard of some, and I know that there will be some coming up
Mm.
close to us, but I haven't seen any myself. I just want to say that Broadway, I know you have all these pre-recorded musicals and I would like you to release them. They are there. I
Uh-huh.
know they are.
Yep. Yeah.
Promise you won't get less people because you send them out. I mean, look at Hamilton. Everyone wants to see Hamilton. I was supposed to see Hamilton and I still want to see it. And I've seen the bootleg, I've seen Netflix.
Yeah, I the the concept of like theater online as an actor is so weird to think about because like we play off of an audience so much, like we rely so heavily on that energy from an audience. I don't know how you get that from like across a screen, right?
I'm actually taking a theater course right now in our online madness, and our professor is a sweetheart. She's trying her absolute best, but she's teaching us to um, act with the screen. Use your surroundings, use the four walls. That is your screen,
Right.
that's it. So, had some really clever ideas like some people have been using because they're able to do complete blackouts by themselves because they're in control of their own space. Um, but it's also really interesting because you can just pull stuff out of anywhere and you won't expect it. Like
Mm.
one kid, actually two kids were doing a scene and they just randomly pulled out swords and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you have swords in your house." Okay. So it's different. But it's fun because it's unexpected and it's almost uncharted territory because in movies everything is perfectly scripted, everything like the scenes are down to the camera angle, but in this it's a new level of creativity
Right.
because we move our laptops or phones or whatever, but we're trying to do the best with what we can and we're coming up with new ideas to try and make it more fun.
That's fair, and I really am interested in what it's gonna be like when things do go back to normal, whatever that ends up being, and how theater is going to have evolved from what we've learned using the technological side of things in a live sense, and
Mm.
how they're gonna like implement some of these things of like new ideas of how to creatively bring things into a piece, and how you incorporate having such a really just piss off of a situation to deal with.
uh, I don't think anyone was. There's some people that have backups and prepared, like restaurants can always do takeout and stuff like that, but theater was not ready for this.
No, not at
And
all.
it's unfortunate because I feel like they could be. Like, I definitely feel like there are people that are willing to spend however long with a cast and isolate with a cast in order to produce a show, but there's like governments, at least to my understanding, that just aren't letting them do it
Yeah.
when they probably have plans in place that they could.
One of the interesting things, and this came out, I think, I want to say it was right around the beginning of quarantine, somewhere around there, maybe even a little bit earlier. Um, Someone that I worked with in the past in theater, who basically they were the artistic director of a company. They dropped that title, moved across the country to go and work on video game design.
Wow.
So total branch. And
Mm.
what they ended up doing with that was they partnered with Oculus, the VR company, and they created a symposium through Oculus VR that they set up a thing where you could actually buy like a pass where they would send you an Oculus kit to be at this symposium where you would be able to walk around and interact with other artists and like curators and stuff like that. And they did this whole set of programming where people did presentations and they did activities together and all this sort of stuff. And it was from like people from around the world were able to get in on this. And um, while they were doing it, it was also allowing them to figure out could we possibly at some point in the future run a production through virtual reality where, you know, it's more of an interactive sort of thing. It's almost like it's, you know, you're in like a movie or in a video game or something, but it's still that sort of theater branch. So that was very, very cool to read into and everything. A lot of money, but
Yeah.
it was quite
That was
interesting.
amazing.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a very, very cool idea, and that's one of the things that I think people, in a sense, kind of overlook is that in times like this, like the creative side of society is going, okay, how can I make everything all at once? Like, how can I do everything right now? And that gives so many opportunities for people that aren't in those creative facets to view that creativity and still have that sort of entertainment that, you know, theater or television and stuff like that take on. Even recently, like I saw an ad for The Good Doctor, and in the ad it was talking about like the new season of The Good Doctor and everything, and they have COVID as one of their topics.
Grey's Anatomy is going to do the exact same thing. It's
Yeah.
like a whole,
Yeah.
yeah,
And like I just find that mind blowing that there are people that are willing to produce something about all of this right now. Like,
I know. Weird because you think about it when you're living through something, you're not thinking about the fact that, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in a history book one day. Like,
mhm.
they're going to talk about this. My grandkids are going to be like, oh, grandma, did you survive? And I'm going to be like, yeah, I did. But yeah, no, I know specifically with Grey's Anatomy, they said like they've been going for what, 17, 18 seasons now,
Yeah.
and they did start out as a medical drama, but lately through the past few years, since a lot of the main characters have been leaving, they've taken up the responsibility of producing storylines that are important to society, whether it's like kids accidentally getting their hands on their parents' guns and hurting someone with it, or supporting a woman who has been sexually assaulted and staying with her until she believes herself that she can be safe and reporting it. So they said they're like, we have an amazing opportunity to speak the truth about this like scientific phenomenon that's happening.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, and like even in like in literature sense, like I want to say a couple of months ago, like probably like early August, I want to say, I was at Indigo and there was a book about COVID. And
already,
I was like, it has been less than a year and you wrote and published a book about this? Like, I can barely write like an essay in like 7 months. Like, how the fuck do you do this? Like,
yeah.
so I find it crazy how people are adapting creatively to the situation. And
Mhm.
I guess in a sense that's kind of how, you know, creativity and those creative facets have to work, is you have to be able to adapt to things in order to continue.
Yeah.
Like it, we can even bring it back to Angels in America, the amount of times that we had to adapt to our situation in order to make things work
Yep.
was insane. Like
Like doing tech in Dungeon Tower.
like doing tech, or you know, people stepping away from the production and having to fill those spots and shuffle around the cast a little bit. People having
Trying to kill
to,
so many people.
yeah, people having, you know, having overworked themselves and end up falling asleep during tech on the floor. Don't know who would do that.
Ow.
um,
What?
but yeah, so like I find it interesting. And like, speaking of, like, you know uh, adapting to all these sort of things and all this, um, one question that I'm actually very interested in knowing the answer to this, because I don't think I've ever asked you this before.
Oh my
if
gosh, okay.
if you could do one show, any show that exists ever, what would it be and why? One show. That's it.
Could you do this?
Every theater kid's worst nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
One show that you could do.
Oh my god.
I can even up the ante a little bit on it too. I can say, would you direct it, or would you act in it? And if you were to act in it, who would you be in it subsequently?
Is this based on the fact that I have all the talent required to do these roles? Because
It
half the shows I'm thinking of, I do not have the range.
it's just whatever you would want to do. If you had one opportunity to do a show, no matter what, like, you're guaranteed to do this show, what would it be?
This is so mean.
I'm gonna mark this one down as an ask every theater kid.
Oh my god. I'm torn between two.
Okay. What are the two?
Okay. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is Wicked, because um, it was the first show I'd ever seen on stage, and it's amazing. It will always have a place in my heart as like my first favorite, and Glinda's costumes are amazing. um, and the banter between, like, the stuff that isn't on the album between the characters is just so funny, and I love it, and the production is amazing, and but then there's Hamilton. Like, both of them are super basic. Like, I promise I know more theater than just the main. But just the family that's created that I've seen with Hamilton, um, and the role of Eliza and the historical importance of it is like mind-boggling.
Okay.
But then again, if Wicked is produced properly with a black Figaro, as it should be, or any other than white Figaro, because he is supposed to he's supposed to resonate with Alphaba and being like not white and not normal.
Right.
So when it's done properly, it does have some amazing messages throughout it as well.
Okay.
That was mean. Your turn.
Well, no. I said one. You gave two. We now have to break it down of which is the one. One of them has to go.
Okay. I will, as much as I love it, I will send Wicked away because Eliza's role for my range is a little more attainable than Kristen Chenoweth's opera.
Okay.
Love her, but I'm not doing that yet. And I'm a little too Glinda-y to be Elphaba, unfortunately.
Okay. Okay. Well, there you go. Broke it down to one show. That was difficult.
Oh my gosh, like every show that I've ever like watched or listened to just like flashed through my mind. I faded saying Heathers just so it could like come up on Broadway or like whatever.
Heathers, yes.
So unfortunate seeing these off Broadway shows never make it to the big stage, and they really deserve it.
I am gonna ask every theater kid that I have on this podcast that exact question just to see their reaction because that's brilliant.
Me.
I mean, to be fair, if I were to answer that question, I would know in a second.
Oh,
So it's
is it your professor one?
no, although that is a very good option. I've already played that, and I feel like if I did it again, it probably it probably wouldn't go as well as I dream it would.
That's fair.
Yeah, just to explain to anybody watching what I'm talking about with that. I did a show back in high school. God, I'm so old. Um, that was it's called Tracks, and I played the professor. And that role ended up being the first role that I got some recognition for, and it really ended up sticking with me because that character had so much depth to it, and my director, and this was the first time that a director had ever given me the ability to do this. They basically said, take the character, which doesn't have a name other than the professor, doesn't have any like super distinguishing qualities. All we know is just the costume, and that's it. Take that character and make it. And having the ability to just rip into this character and like delve to the like deepest parts of it, that's that's why I loved that character so much, was because I got so close to that character that when I was getting ready for the show and everything, I told the other actors, I was like, I will happily talk to you guys about like what's going on and all this sort of stuff until like 5:30. At 5:30, I am off. Like I'm my brain shuts off and my character turns on. Like the moment the clock switches over, I am like no more. um and I did that, and I had conversations with the other people that were there while I was in character, and some of them would slip into the character to talk to me, or they would not, and they would talk to me like normal. And and I'm unfortunately I'm one of those actors that when I have a role that I'm devoted to, I get really into the mindset of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard to have that sort of, I guess you could call like cast camaraderie before the show, because it's so like, okay, I've got to get into this space of a different person and everything, and that makes me think of Angels in America. There were so many times where I would be like out in the stage space with my headphones on, listening to my soundtrack that I had built for the show, just sitting there like getting into it, and people would come along and I'd just be like what? Like, what do you want? Like, what?
Till I came over with all my Hufflepuff energy and like
like,
spoke to you anyway.
hey,
You
hey,
didn't scare
hey,
me.
hey, Sai, hey.
What
Yeah.
are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Why aren't you with us? Come join us, please. Come. We're playing a game.
It's just like um it's funny too. I don't know if I ever told anybody from Angels about this, but after our cast party, when I left, um, I got home, and Luna Rose, my significant other, was at my place, and she had already gone to bed. So when I got home, I was in my old house, so got in and put all my stuff down. I was trying to be quiet because everybody in the house was sleeping and didn't want to wake anybody up. It was super fucking early in the morning. I finally get upstairs, go into my room, close the door and everything, and I'm starting to get ready to go to bed. And she woke up, and I was like, "Oh, hey." And she was like, "Hi." And we talked a little bit, and she goes, "What's wrong?" I was like, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "You don't seem like you." I was like, "What? Like, what the fuck does that even mean?" And eventually, when I was like sitting there with her, she was like, "You don't you don't sound like yourself. You have this look that isn't yours, and you don't feel like yourself." Like she was like grabbing my hand, and she was like, "You don't feel like you're you." And I was like, "I'm so confused as to what you're trying to tell me here." And eventually she was like, "I think you're still in character. Like, I think you're still with Lewis. I think you're still in that space." And I took a second to kind of like, when the best thing I can attribute it to is like, you take like a really long nap in the middle of the day, you wake up and it's darker than it was, but you don't know whether or not it's morning or it's night, and you have that momentary thing of like, what is existence? Um, it was that.
Pretty much, yeah.
It was that sort of like, am I still in character? What's going on? And I realized that I was kind of still in that space, and I didn't know why, because that hadn't really been a thing before, but like I had kind of noticed it in like other shows from before and stuff like that. And still now, like, she was studying it for one of her courses this semester, and she asked me a question about it. I was like, "I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I can't talk to you about it." And she was like, "Why not?" I was like, "Because I don't have the ability to have a conversation about that scene yet." And it was it's the ambulance scene with Pryor and Lewis when things first start to really go downhill. And like I said, I was like, I don't have the ability to talk about that scene yet because myself and my scene partner Sheldon, who I'm really hoping I get on the podcast at some point, because um, we had so many rehearsals where we would get through that scene and we would just stop, and we both just had to shut down and like kind of remove ourselves from everything and just like recover from it.
Mm.
Because when you get into a character like that, you're so intensely connected to it that you kind of lose the grip on like, okay, I gotta pull back from this. Like, you're so focused on trying to tell the story.
Well, sometimes that can be helpful because you probably remember this. Chris and I were also in that scene. We were
Yes.
on stage at that point as well. And I was for a lot of it, but I had to like dig deep into Harper because sitting on that stage worrying about my own thing. I mean, I was lucky because I was supposed to look terrified, but like listening to the scene going on beside me and not being able to react to it like the people would backstage or the people would on stages, it was just a whole other level.
Yeah, and
So I was
we got really lucky too because our cast was so close with one another that when things like that were happening, everyone afterwards was there and ready to kind of deal with it and like help each other through it and everything. Because I remember 2-9, the mirrored fight scenes. between
Oh my god.
Lewis and Pryor and Harper
Never
and Joe.
got right.
Yeah. Um, that no matter how many times we practiced it, it was just let's just
We did a
get through
great
it and see what
rehearsal, and
happens.
then yeah,
But there were so many times where we did that, and afterwards, I remember one time in particular, we finished it, and the four of us just kind of like looked around at one another, just kind of like, "Are we good? Like, everyone's all right? Like, okay, cool." And then of course there was the time where we do that scene. I come backstage. I'm either changing or I was just sitting back there like fiddling with my costume, and you come over to me and go, "What happened in that scene?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" And you were like,
yep.
"We fucked up somewhere. I just don't know where." And
None of us did.
I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, did we?
No, it started with Chris. I think Chris skipped a line or he said something early, but then Sheldon managed to pick it up with his line. So then we were all like still like on track, but we were all like, something's missing, something's missing. We didn't say something. And then we all got off stage. And I know Chris was upset with himself, but he didn't know why. And like Sheldon and I were like, what happened? But we couldn't figure it out because it was so fast and Sheldon picked it up so quickly
Mm.
that to this day I have no idea what we did.
It's funny too because I think in every single show that we did for that run, I feel so bad for Zayd because the scene where Lewis goes on his super racist tirade,
Yeah.
that was different every night.
Yeah.
And the
I
amount
listened to it backstage
oh
or
yeah,
something.
the amount of times that I like got to a certain point where I was talking and I was like, I just need to move to the next bit. Like I'm circling, so I would look at Zayd directly and I would say something to him, but I would give him the eyes of like, please get ready for your line. Like get me the fuck out of here. Uh theater
Dave
is
helped me out too. Is stuck in a scene. We were doing the snow scene.
mm,
So I'm lucky in that I had a character that was spaced out enough that if I forgot something, I could just like play it off. But I missed a line, but I didn't realize I had because it was the ending line and it was supposed to lead into Zayd's next line. And I just didn't say it because I didn't think I had to say it yet. And I was just like waiting. And I'm like, Zayd, why aren't you saying anything? And then Zayd finally like um turned my line into one of his. And then I was like, oh, it was my fault. I just couldn't like I was going over the scene and I could like see I couldn't actually see her because of the lights, but I could definitely see Gabby like freaking out at the back, like trying to figure out what happened. But he saved our butts multiple times.
I I
That man
always
is a
oh god, yeah. Just absolute wonderful human being.
mm,
Um there were so many times I think for everybody in that show where we did like something that wasn't 100% to the scene and our scene partner got it and just like somehow let us know that it was our fault for it in a loving sense of just kind of like, okay, I'll take this. Um, like it makes me think of the opening scene of Sheldon and I's when we're talking and I somehow flipped. Um, I somehow said something along the lines of like, "I'm sorry I get so, I'm sorry I get so butch at these parties," which wasn't the line. I was supposed to say, "I'm sorry I get so weird at these parties. It's just that I get so," and then he goes, "Butch, you
he
get
goes
butch."
like, yeah.
So I said butch before he did. So then when I stopped, he went, "Yeah, you are butch." And I was like, "Oh, that was just Sheldon talking directly to me. Like that wasn't character. That was just him going like, nah. Take that." Oh
Yeah.
God. Um.
Yes. I think I had one solid scene with Sheldon, and it was so fun with the dream sequence of him in drag and me in the dress. It was just so fun because at that point Harper wasn't worried about anything else. She was having the time of her life,
Yeah, she was just
riding that wave of medication,
absolutely stoned. Yeah.
and then Sheldon was too. It was great. That was one of my favorite
That
scenes.
was a
Just
very,
great energy.
very good scene.
Always fun to realize that you're gay.
I mean, I stole him away too.
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
It's kind of funny because like I think about the fact that in the earlier stages of rehearsal and everything we didn't interact too much, and further on in the process is when we started to talk more with one another. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember I remember the amount of times that we would just slip into character to have the argument of like, well, my husband ended up being gay, and I would just go, yes, he is. You were like, stop, like, enough from you. But just all
Yeah.
of those times.
Yes. That was quite bitter with you.
Yes.
That was actually, I don't know if I told you this, but I walked Chris because he wasn't familiar with where we were. So I walked him because his brother lived where we were.
Right.
So I walked him to his brother to show him where he was. And his brother came out from where he was living. And then I was still just there with him. And then Chris was just talking to his brother. And then he looks up and he's like, oh, yeah, my wife.
Yeah.
And he just keeps doing what he's doing. And Chris's brother and I just look at each other and was like, hi. This is the first introduction.
I remember you mentioning that. That is absolutely
Yeah.
the way that Chris would handle that situation. But kind of backtracking here because I realized that I somehow fuck it. I somehow skewed what I was talking about. The one show that I could do if I had the opportunity. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Oh my gosh, how did I not think of that?
Without question, because
Wow.
it's on hand. Like I can just pull it right up. I If I had the opportunity to do that show, I would be so conflicted of where I would want to be cast in that, because both Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are incredible, and they're interchangeable, so it doesn't really even matter who you get cast as. The player is obviously just incredible. And also Hamlet, just in his own little bubble for that show, is so good. But yeah, if I had the opportunity, that would be it. And I almost pitched that show. I had an entire write-up for it. I had an entire proposal. And on the last day, I went, no. And just swatted it.
Maybe this year?
Hmm?
This year?
Yeah.
I mean, probably a good thing that you didn't do it this year,
Mm-hmm.
considering circumstances are not the best.
Well, and that was one of the reasons that I didn't, was because it would have been in...
It's a show that deserves to be staged.
Mm-hmm.
Not that no show deserves, like
No.
any show doesn't deserve to, but it's one that needs to be.
And it would have been very difficult to have put it over a screen for that show, because it involves a lot of physical aspects.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be the one right there. That, oh.
Yeah. I have a few plays that I enjoy, but not something I could do. Like A Raisin in the Sun is amazing, and I believe it should be staged today. However, it is a predominantly, well, except for I think like one character. It's a black cast. So I would love to watch it. I do not have the right to produce or direct or be in it, because that one character is a man. But it's amazing, and it speaks about like issues that are still going on today. But if you, it's not too long of a read. It's basically, I think, like a one-act play. So I highly suggest it.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah, I one of the things that I've loved about like taking some of the theater courses that are available throughout my university years now that I'm about to graduate. Oh, God.
That's
Is like
why I'm continued like doing things to prolong that.
I mean, I've only got till December. I'm screwed. soon as
Yeah.
soon as that comes, I have to actually be an adult. I say as I live here. But no, like finding new plays and studying things that I never would have studied previously or even taken the time to look at. One course that I did was the uh, criticism course, basically, and it was the whole premise of it was you go and see shows, and then you write critiques on them, and the amount of times that I would end up downtown at like 11:30 at night just by myself walking down the main roads and everything with my phone in my hand with a voice recorder on, just talking to myself as I go to the train to get home, like was ridiculous. And I saw so many productions during that year that I never would have looked at and now can't imagine not knowing about.
Yeah.
One in particular, and I think is it's a production that should stay around for a very long time because its message is quite important, even if the issue is not as prominent at the time or however it ends up spinning. But it was a show called Old Stock: A Refugee Love Story, and it was a musical in a sense, but all of the music was done, well, all the vocal portions were pretty much done by one person who wrote the music, wrote the script of it, performed it, like whole nine
Wow.
yards. And the story is incredible, but the music was so good. Like, it's one of the songs in it. It's called Lullaby. Lullaby by Ben Kaplan. It is. It's a really beautiful song that is also a little heartbreaking in a sense because
Okay.
of the instance of it and everything. Because you hear like, the title of it is Lullaby, so you would think like, um, you would think that it's pretty calm and everything like that. I'm gonna see if I can pull up the.
Lullabies tend to be sad stories, encapsulated in a beautiful melody.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what this is. Like it's um, one of the portions of it is um, we used to go dancing, we used to drink wine, we used to buy flowers, and now we buy time. And like just that thing alone, and um, like it's just the message of it is so beautiful. I often just have it on repeat, just listening to it over and over and over again. Um, But that show was, I remember coming out of it just being like, wow, like, okay, that happened, cool, like, all right. And then on the flip side of that, I saw a production of Swan Lake, and it was not the original Swan Lake. That's for sure.
Ooh,
It was
just
it was
is it more like Black Swan?
yeah, yeah, pretty much. It was quite fucked, to put it as bluntly as possible. It just opened with, the lights in the house didn't turn off or anything. Just the curtains slowly started to open while people were still coming in and sitting down, and the curtain opens and there's just a man with a cattle lead, so one of the like ropes on tied to a cinder block in the center of the stage, in nothing but his underwear, just walking back and forth in a circle, buying like a sheep. Just just walking, and then he'd get to a certain point and the rope would stop him. So he'd turn around and walk the other way. Rope would stop him. He'd turn around and walk the other way. The lights are still on. People are still talking and everything. I'm sitting there looking around like, it, am I the only person that's seeing what the fuck is happening right now? Like, how are you carrying on a conversation? Like,
Yeah.
what is going on? And it went on for like 15 minutes, I'd say,
Wow.
of just that, just this one guy just walking back and forth. And progressively, people started to get the idea of like, oh, oh, something's happening.
Is it
Oh, okay, now we'll quiet down a bit. So it just progressively got quieter and quieter and quieter. But it was just 15 minutes of this, like, this one thing going on. And it was wild how anxiety inducing that was.
Yeah.
Of like, just, like, not even just as, like, an audience member, but as, like, somebody that has been in theater for quite a few years. You're sitting there looking at this and you're like, what is going on? Like, did something go wrong? Is something happening? Like, I don't know whether or not this means anything. Like, what is.
And if it does, what is going through that person's mind for 15 minutes?
Exactly. Like, and it's literally, like, nothing changed about it. It was just this hyper realistic noise of, like, a sheep buying from this guy in his underwear tied to a cinder block, just walking with all the lights on and people still coming to their seats and, talking about the restaurant that they went to and stuff like that. It was like what is going on right now? And
Sometimes directors.
yeah, and my prof, when we talked about it in class, she opened the conversation with, so, and everybody just kind of sat there, and she was like, I guess I'll start. That was fucked. And we were like, yeah, yeah, pretty much. That's the only way to describe that. But yeah, like, the the fact that right now, of any time really for theater, that there's all of these shows that aren't running in the same capacity that they were, as actors, that's heartbreaking, right?
Mm.
Like, I can't even imagine. Well, I mean, I can kind of imagine the fact that for myself, this is going to be the first time that I have gone for over a year not doing a production since, like, grade 10. So that
Wow.
was, I don't know how many years ago that was.
Six.
So wait,
How
fourth
old
year,
you are?
fourth year now, third year, second year, first year,
Six
13th, 12th,
years plus
11th.
2 more high school.
Well, no, because I had my year off at one point, so I don't know. It was a long fucking time ago. I'm old and I can't do math. That's simple. um,
Fair.
like it's gonna be the first time that in a year's length I'm not gonna have theater, right? Which is wild.
Yeah.
Like it's not like, you know, I was like, oh, it's a pandemic. I'm just gonna stop with theater. Like I've been auditioning for things and like
Mm.
it just hasn't come, you know, and that's wild. And um, you know, even alternatively, I posted about this both in my Twitch servers, Discord, twitch.tv/solvarsi, and I mentioned to them that just recently the film that I worked on last year,
Mm-hmm.
last year, um, just got finished its editing process. So it's pretty much ready. There's only a few more things that need to be done, and then it's going to get released, sort of. Um, but I got to see it the other night, but I saw it from right where I'm sitting now. I
Yeah.
didn't get to go and be with the people that I did the film with. So it was almost like looking into like a window to the past almost of like, man, remember when we could have like six people from completely different households in one very small confined area for multiple hours and nobody had to worry about getting the plague? Like so
Yeah.
yeah, it's wild times. Wild times.
Definitely.
And now, you know, even now I'm adapting and doing a podcast by using Discord and my stream software. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
nor- normally it would literally just
Far
be,
away from each other.
yeah, normally it would just be the mic, the other person directly beside me, and that would be it. Like no camera, no recording software, just the mic, the audio, and that's it. But you know, now it's not even possible. So
Mm.
yeah, it's crazy. But I believe if I have my timestamp correctly, we've been going for just about an hour and 5 hour ish, maybe. Um, I think that's probably a good place to end it off. Um, this was really entertaining and like talking about theater and everything. It,
Yeah, it was fun.
yeah, it was quite nice to have this little discussion about things. So thank you very much for coming on to the podcast. Do you have any projects you're currently working towards that you want to plug and shout out or anything? Or
Personally, no.
right on.
Unfortunately, yeah, not right now.
Okay. Well, nonetheless, thank you very much for coming, and to all of you that are watching, thank you very much for joining us for this episode of whatever the fuck I call this podcast. Maybe I'll just call it that. Maybe that's what it'll be. It's just whatever the blank I call this because I can't post it to YouTube if I have the curse in it. It's demonetized anyway, so it doesn't fucking matter. Fuck you, YouTube policies. Um, so,
Yeah.
so, as always, if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe down below. Check out, as I mentioned previously, twitch.tv/soulfiresci. There's links to Discord server for all the updates, and I think there's a link back to here, so you could just go in the infinite loop of the Twitch back to the YouTube, back to the Twitch, back to the YouTube, and just stay in that bracket forever. Um, if you haven't already, do make sure you check out the previous episode of this podcast with Justin, where we talk about some riddles that I gave him that broke his mind, which was quite entertaining. Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask this one to you quickly just to see what your reaction is. Is the S or the C silent in the word sent?
Neither of them.
Neither of them.
Neither of them are silent. That's not a riddle. That's just a mean question.
Well, how are neither of them silent?
Because it like flows into each other. Like you start with a sent. It
right.
Okay. You can't.
But
Either of them.
There's sent, sent, and sent, right? That's all the same word.
Yes, but when you read them, you say them unconsciously different.
Do you?
Usually, when I say sent with an S, as if I'm sending a letter,
right.
It's a very, like, soft S. When I'm saying sent, as in a penny, I consciously know that I'm softening a C. So when I say scent, as in smell, I can feel myself like slipping from the soft S to the soft C into the rest of the word.
Right.
I don't know if this is just an English thing, English major thing, but like, I don't know.
All right, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to go back and compare what Justin said to that, because I'm pretty sure he just went and just started to crack. So,
yes. Well, what I've learned is with English is there's never usually one answer as long as you can argue your way into being right.
It's true. If you
got it.
If you can have 7 to 10 different scholarly sources that you can cite, then everything's fine. All right. Well, as I was saying, make sure you go back and check out Justin's podcast to see that chaos. And also hear the story of how him and I met one another, which is always entertaining. And also check out some of the other videos that are up on the channel, including the New York trip with Luna Rose, probably one of my better edits that I've done. And there's some old gaming content back there, but you don't need to scroll that far down. Just there's like a line, you'll find it, you'll know. But yeah, thank you everybody for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.